We begin today the third wide line on Daf Daled Amud Aleph, where it says Itmar. Sagt the Gemara, Itmar, we learned the following machlokes: Shabbos v'Yom Tov. If you have Shabbos and following the Shabbos, right away Yom Tov on Sunday. So Rav Amar, Rav says, Neilda b'zeh, Asura b'zeh. If the egg was born on Shabbos, so then it's Asur on Yom Tov. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, Neilda b'zeh, Muteres b'zeh. If it's born on Shabbos, it will be mutter on Yom Tov. The next day, it's mutter. Hey, so let us say, what is the basis of their machlokes here? Kasava Rav, that Rav holds, Kedusha Achasi, that Shabbos and Yom Tov that follow one after the other, because they're both holy days. So it's considered to be like one long Kedusha. So just like a Beya Shanel de Yom Tov you can't eat, so Shabbos and Yom Tov are like one long Kedusha, so you can't eat it even on Yom Tov that follows after Shabbos. But that can't be, because Rav said regarding this subject that halacha karba zekenim va'aliba de Rabbi Eliezer, that we paskin like 4 zekenim, and according to Rabbi Eliezer, the Omar that said shtei kedushasein, that Shabbos and Yom Tov are 2 different kedushas. And as we'll see in a moment, a nafkamina for this would be that after Shabbos you have to make Havdalah, and then starts Yom Tov, which is another kedusha. It's 2 different kedushas. That's what Rav said. So you can't say that the reason why he was saying you can't eat the Beya Shanel de B'Shabbos on the Yom Tov afterwards is because it's one Kedusha. Elo hoche ba'achone de Rabba kamiflegi. Rather, what they're arguing about is the point that Rabbi said that Shabbos cannot prepare for Yom Tov. Rabbi, with the pasuk that we had on Daf Beitza Amud Aleph, v'hayi b'yom hashishi ve'echino asashayiviu, that you have to prepare it on a Friday, on a weekday, but not Shabbos prepare for Yom Tov, and Yom Tov can't prepare for Shabbos. That's what Rabbi said. So that's what they're arguing about here. So Rav Islay Achana de Rabba. Rav holds of this Achana de Rabba, this Isser Minatayra, that Rabba learned out that Shabbos can't prepare for Yom Tov. So therefore, if the egg was born on Shabbos, you can't use it on Yom Tov. But Rabbi Yochanan, Leslay Achana de Rabba. And Rabbi Yochanan does not hold of this Achana de Rabba. Ketanoi, this is a machlokes Tanoim, because we learned in the Beitza, it says, Neilda b'Shabbos, Teichel b'Yom Tov. The egg that's born on Shabbos could be eaten on Yom Tov. Or b'Yom Tov, Teichel b'Shabbos. On Yom Tov, it could be eaten on the Shabbos that's right after. Rabbi Yudai, Mimishum Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yudai says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, Adayini machlokes, this is still a machlokes, Shebeishamei yomrim Teichel. Beis Shammai says you could eat it. Beis Hillel Oimrim Lo Teichel. Beis Hillel says you can't. Just like there was the machlokes in the Mishnah regarding the Beya Shanel de B'Yom Tov. So Beis Hillel holds if it's Neilad b'Shabbos or on Yom Tov that's right before Shabbos, or Shabbos right before Yom Tov, so Beis Hillel says Lo Teichel, like because of the Hachana of Rabbah. So that's we see here clearly that this was a machlokes Tanoim. The Gemara brings an incident that happened. Ushpezichnei de Rav Ada Barava, a guest that was staying by Rav Ada Barava. So he had eggs that were born on Yom Tov, and he had it then on the next day on Shabbos. So he came to Rav Ada Barava. Could I fry these eggs today, or roast these eggs today, and eat it tomorrow? So he's not going to eat it on Shabbos itself because it's Neilda b'Shabbos. So on Shabbos, sorry, obviously we're talking about Yom Tov, and then Shabbos, Yom Tov on Friday, and then Shabbos. So he's not going to eat it on Yom Tov itself, because Neil be Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat the egg. But could he roast it today on Yom Tov and then eat it tomorrow on Shabbos? So Rav Ada Barava says to him, "My daitich, what's your opinion? Why are you asking this question?" Rav Yochanan, halacha Rav Yochanan. It's because you're thinking that since this is a machlokes between Rav and Rav Yochanan, whether an egg that's born on Yom Tov, if you could eat it the next day on Shabbos, so that's the machlokes, and Rav Yochanan is the one that says that you could eat it on the next day on Shabbos. So therefore, you want to roast it today to eat it tomorrow on Shabbos. But he says, even Rabbi Yochanan only says that you're allowed to eat it tomorrow. But on the day that it's born, not only are you not allowed to eat it, you're not allowed to touch it. It's muktzah. Since you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos, you're also not allowed to move it b'chlal. It's muktzah today, so you can't roast it today to prepare for tomorrow. And the Gemara brings a Beitza that says this point. Ve'hatanya, like we learned in a Beitza, and we had this before. Achas beya shenel de b'Shabbos, v'achas beya shenel de b'Yom Tov, an egg born on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Ein metaltel enoisa, you're not allowed to move it. Lo lechases ba sakeli, to use it to cover something. V'lo lismech ba karei amite, and not to use it to lean a bed on it. So you see that not only you're not allowed to eat it, you're not even allowed to move it. So therefore you have to wait until tomorrow if you want to eat it. Or legaima means you're going to have to swallow your raw egg, but you're not going to be able to cook it or prepare it today on Yontif. Another incident happened, and here the Psak Din was different. Ushbezichne der Rav Papa, a guest of Rav Papa. Others say that it's just a person that came to ask a question of Rav Papa. So So he had these eggs that were born on Shabbos, and he wanted to use it for Yontif. So he came to Rav Papa to ask him whether he can use it the next day on Yontif. Can I eat these eggs tomorrow? Amalei, so this was Shabbos afternoon when he came to asking the question. So Amalei, Rav Papa says to him, Zilid, no, go today. In other words, go away now, I'm not going to answer you now. And V'sala Mochar, and come back tomorrow, and I'll answer you tomorrow. And he explained to him why Shabbos afternoon he doesn't want to answer him. The Rav, Le'maiki Amayra Ilavei, Rav never put an Amayra, which was the Meturgaman, the person that used to teach the Torah that he was, when he gave a shiur, he never gave a shiur and had an Amayra teach what he was saying. When it was an afternoon of a Yontif, in other words, as Rashi says, means that it was already after the Suda of Yontif, and it was just the halachas that he would be teaching for tomorrow. He never gave a shiur in the afternoon after the Suda for tomorrow. Why not? Mishum shichros, because after the Suda and they drank wine, so he doesn't want to teach halachas after he drank wine. He can make a mistake. Right, as Rashi brings it, a shikr is not allowed to be paskening halachas. Yain v'shecher al teish goes on even teaching and paskening halachas. So therefore, Rav Papa didn't want to answer him Shabbos afternoon. So this person came back tomorrow to Rav Papa. Amalei, so Rav Papa told him as follows: Eichu hashta. How would have it been now? In other words, as Rashi says, he was saying, how would have it been now if I would have yesterday paskened for you? Va'amri la ishtaloi. Then I would have forgotten. And v'amri lach, and I would have told you, based on the usual rule, that Rav Yechanan, halacha ke Rav Yechanan, that halacha is like Rav Yechanan, that you're allowed to eat the egg today on Yontif. But the thing is, I would have been wrong, because Amar Rava said that Hilchase kevasei de Rav bahani tlas, that the halacha is like Rav regarding three halachas, bein lekula and bein lechumra. There are things that Rav said that are lenient and things that Rav said that are stringent, and we paskin like Rav. So what are those three things? So one of them was this machlekes here regarding Abeish and Neilid b'Yontiv, and then it's Shabbos right after, or Neilid b'Shabbos, and it's Yontiv right after, and Rav was machmer, like the Achana of Rabbah, and we paskin like Rav regarding this. So Rava here said that this is an exception. So it's good that I didn't paskin yesterday. I waited till today so I can give you the right halacha that you're not allowed to eat the egg today. So this is not like what Rav Adda bar Ava paskin, that you paskin like Rav Yechanan. I think when I learned Tav Beis, I by mistake said that we don't paskin like Rabbah. But here you see in the Gemara that Rav holds like Rabbah and we paskin like Rabbah, and actually the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch brings it as well. In Siman Tov Kuf Yud Gimel, the Alter Rebbe there brings that the pshat in the Mishnah of Be'eh Shenel de B'Yontif, why is the Be'eh Aser? Even though it's a chicken that was designated for eating, what's the issue? So we had 4 or 5 pshatim in the Mishnah. The Alter Rebbe brings the pshat in the Mishnah like Rabbah. It's a Isser min HaTorah to eat the egg that's nailed b'Yontif because of the Isser of Hachana. That's actually on a Yontif that comes right after Shabbos. Then it's Isser min HaTorah. But on a regular Yontif, it's a Gzeira because of a Yontif that comes after Shabbos. The Alter Rebbe brings the pshat in the Mishnah like Rabbah. And here, this is what the Gemara says, that we paskin like Rav, which held like Rabbah. There's another 2 cases that the Gemara here is saying that the halacha is like Rav. We'll see those 2 cases soon. But first the Gemara brings another halacha. Amar Rabbi Yechanan said, Eitzim shenoshrim min hadekel b'Shabbos, wood that fell off a tree on Shabbos. So this was muktzah. You couldn't, when Shabbos came in, it was connected to the tree. Aser la'asikan b'Yontif. So on the next day, on Yontif, if it's on a Sunday, you're not allowed to use that wood for a fire that you're allowed to make on Yontif. Now the Gemara explains, Va'al teshiveni beya. Don't answer me that let's learn out from a Beya that's born on a Shabbos, that according to Rabbi Yechanan, you could use it on the next day on Yontif. Why? Because that's different. My time, Beya, what's the reason why by an egg? That you can use it on the next day, Mishum de B'Yayme, Nami Chazi Legaima. Because an egg that's born on Shabbos, so Minat Teire, there's no Isser to eat that egg on that Shabbos. And you're not letting him eat it until tomorrow, until Yontif. So therefore, Meida Yidiyah, so because of that, everybody will know, the Bas Yoima Asrua, that on that day, on Shabbos, there's an Issa to eat the egg, because they see that the egg that was born on Shabbos, there's any Issa to eat the egg. You're not making a fire, you're not doing anything, so on Shabbos, you're allowed to eat it on Shabbos, raw, but nevertheless, they don't allow you to eat it until tomorrow. Right, so therefore you see from this that it's asur until the next day. But when it comes to the eitzim, when it comes to wood on Shabbos, there's nothing you can do with the wood. What are you going to do with the wood? You're going to make a fire with it on Shabbos. You anyways can't use it. You're not allowed to make a fire with it. So ishari lahula machar, if you're going to allow the person to use this wood that fell from the tree on Shabbos, you're going to allow him to use it tomorrow on Yontif, asi lemeimar, people are going to come and make the mistake and say, that really the wood is allowed to be used on Shabbos as well. The only reason why on Shabbos itself he wasn't using the wood is because what are you going to do with the wood? You can't make a fire on Shabbos anyways. So therefore, if you're going to allow to use this wood that fell from the tree on Shabbos for the next day Yontif, people will come to make the mistake that you're allowed to use it on Shabbos itself. So therefore, they ask her to use the wood on Yontif, the wood that fell down on Yontif. Mashen came by the egg. By the egg, everybody will understand that the Isser of the egg is not because you have nothing to do with the egg. Everybody will understand that the Isser of the egg is because even though you could use it, but nevertheless it's muktzah, and therefore on Shabbos you're not allowed to use it. There people won't make that mistake when they'll see that you're allowed to use the egg the next day on Yontif. Amar Rav Masne said, Eitzim shenoshrim min hadekel letechatana bi-Yontif. How about if you have branches that fell from a palm tree straight into an oven on Yontif. So you have a fireplace or an oven, and the branches fell into the oven. So now this is muktzah. When Yontif came in, it was connected to the tree. But it fell straight into your oven. So what do? Are you allowed to use your oven with this muktzah branches? So mar ba'aleim eitzim muchanim. So take other firewood that were prepared that are not muktzah, and umasikon, and then make the fire, and you have more firewood that's not muktzah, and you can make the fire that way. Fragt the Gemara, but then when you have a fire in an oven, so you have to turn it over, and you have to make the fire that it should be good. And when you're doing that, so you're doing it not only with the wood that you put in, that you added, that's mutter, but there's also the wood that was muktzah there. And how are you allowed to use and be mahapach that wood? That's asur. And for the Gemara, kivin, the rube, the hateirininu, since you added wood, and most of the wood now is mutter, so therefore, even if you're going to have to go and fix the fire, and so you're doing it with a wood, it's all considered to be mutter. In other words, once it becomes batel b'raiv, it's all considered to be mutter, and therefore there's no problem for the person to even go and be mahapach with this fire. Fragt the Gemara, but there's another issue here. How could you say that when you have muktzah wood, which is asur, so what are you going to do? You're going to go and add firewood to be mevatel it. But we know that you're not allowed to do that, because v'hakam mevatel isur lechatchila. You're taking an isur of muktzah, and you're lechatchila adding mutter digger wood to be mevatel an isur lechatchila. But tanan, no, but it fell in, but you don't have to use it. So if it fell in, it's muktzah wood, you're not allowed to use the oven. And we're telling him, go add more mutter digger wood and be mevatel it. V'tanan, we learned, we're talking about Yontif here. We're talking about Yontif, right? We learned, ein mevatlin is lechatchila. You're not allowed to go ahead lechatchila and be mevatel is. So the whole concept of bittul b'roiv is if it happens, then it becomes batel. But you're not allowed to be mevatel is lechatchila. And for the Gemara, this klal, that you're not allowed to be mevatel is lechatchila, hanimili b'doiraisa. That's only when it comes to something which is asur min hatayra. Aval b'derabanan, when something is asur b'derabanan, mevatlan. Here you are allowed to be mevatel and isur b'derabanan lechatchila. So here we're talking about the isur of muktzah. So the isur of muktzah, you're allowed to be mevatel lechatchila. Tais just adds to this that it's not always, not every single isur b'derabanan are you allowed to be mevatel lechatchila. Only if it's isur b'derabanan that has no yisoid in a deraisa, like muktzah. Muktzah, chachamim instituted on their own. But when you have a derabanan that's connected to a deraisa, and Taisus brings an example from the Gemara we spoke about before, which is truma midrabanan. We had yesterday when a person was squeezing the figs into a mold, and you weren't sure if you took the truma or not. In a case where it's a truma midrabanan, because it's connected to a deraisa, you're not allowed to be mevatel lechatchila. Well, Rav Ashi the Gemara has another question. What did Rav Ashi say? Kol dova sheyesh lo matirin. Anytime you have an isser, that with time it's going to become mutter. Afilu b'derabanan lo bottle. Even if it's isser b'derabanan, it will never become bottle. You have to wait until it becomes mutter. So what can we say over here regarding this halacha where you have the muktzah of yontif and you say that you can be mevatel it, but there's no bittul because it's going to become mutter tomorrow. So how is there a b'chlal of bittul here? And for the Gemara, hanimili heichedi isei li isure be'einei. This that you can't be mevatel the isser because it's yesh le matirin, that's an isser that exists, that's still here for itself. It still exists in the world. But hacha mikla koli isura. Over here, we're talking about firewood that's getting burnt in the fire, so because it gets burnt, so therefore it doesn't exist, and therefore it's not an issue of being mevatel this isser. You could be mevatel this isser. There's a few different pshatim here in this Gemara. What it means, mikla kali yisura. One of the pshatim in the Gemara is because when you're using the wood in an oven to cook with it, so when do you get the hana of this wood? After it creates the fire, which creates the heat that cooks your food. So you're getting the hana of the burning of the wood after it gets consumed in the fire. That creates the fire, but not from the wood itself that exists. That's one pshat. The Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch and Kuntras Achron says that the pshat in the Gemara is even if you're going to say that you're getting the hana from the wood itself, let's say from the heat of the wood, and the wood is still in existence. How could the Gemara say that it's mikla kali, that it's already burnt? But the Alter Rebbe brings the cloud that it says, kala oimid lisarif kesarav dami. Something that's already there, designated to get burnt. It's in fire, it's burning, it's as if it was burnt already. So it's as if it doesn't exist anymore. So therefore here, you could be you could be mevatel this isser. Itmar, we learned another machlokes, and here this is the second halacha of Rav. We brought before that there are three cases that the halacha is like Rav. This is the second one. So Itmar, we learned the machlokes Shnei Yamim Tovim Shel Golius, when you have the 2 days of Yontif and Golus. So Rav says Neil de Bezeh, an egg that's born on the first day, Muteres Bezeh, you're allowed to eat it on the second day of Yontif. Ravasi says Neil de Bezeh, it's born on the first day of Yontif, Asura Bezeh, it's also to eat it on the second day of Yontif. So now, what does it seem like their machlokes is based on? Whether the 2 days of Yom Tiv are two separate kedushas or one kedusha. So leime, shall we say, kasav Rabasi, that Rabasi holds kedusha achasi, that the 2 days of Yom Tiv are like one kedusha. So the first and second day is one continuation. So you can't eat it even on the second day. But could that be? Ravasi mavdul miyemitav lachavre. Ravasi would actually make avdallah from the first to second day of Yontif. And as Rashi says, he would say, Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'chayil. Why? Because the whole Yontif is a suffix. If the first day is Kodesh, the second day is Chayil. If the first day is Chayil, the second day is Kodesh. So he would say, Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'chayil. The Mefarshim actually say, didn't Mamish make a separate bracha of Avdallah on a kais, Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'chayil, because Sof it's a suffix. So how can you make a bracha of Avdallah? It means that in the Shmei Nasra, in the bracha, he would add it in and say, Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'chayil. So we see that he held that it's two different kedushas. So the Gemara explains, Rav Asi sfuke misapkele. Rav Asi himself had a suffix about this, whether the 2 days of Yontif are considered to be one long hemshech, or it's a suffix. And therefore, v'avid hachal l'chumre, and v'hachal l'chumre. And therefore, he was machmer. He was machmer regarding the egg, that you can't eat it on both days Yontif, and he was also machmer regarding Avdallah, that he considered it to be 2 different days of Yontif. So now the Gemara will explain the basis of this machlokes here, whether the 2 days of Yontif and Golus are considered to be one long day, or it's considered to be 2 separate kedushas. Rav Zeire says, Kavase de Ravasi mistavre, it's logical, like Ravasi said, that it's one long Yontif. Why? Now we know the kviyas of the Chodesh. Now it's not a suffix anymore. We know exactly what the day is, what the day of the month is, what the day of the Yontif is. And nevertheless, we kav dinon today yomi, and we still have 2 days of Yontif. So why do we have 2 days of Yontif now? Not because of any suffix. It's because Chachamim said that you should still keep the 2 days of Yontif, even though we know already what it is. So what does that mean? That when we make the 2 days of Yontif today, it's without a suffix. Chachamim established that we should still continue the minig of 2 days of Yontif, and today it's a vadai. It's not a suffix anymore. So therefore it's considered to be like one long Yontif that Chachamim instituted to keep. Abaye says no, kvasei de Rav mistavra. It's logical to say, like Rav said, Why? The Tanan, because in the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah we learned, how did they do it l'chatchila when they wanted to show all the people that are far away that they already were Mekadosh the Chodesh? So what did they do? Barishaina, in the beginning, Hayu Masiyim Masuais. So they had these big torches that they would go up mountains, and they one mountain, and then the next mountain saw the torches. Like this, they would go from one location to another until the message would get out to a very far distance, even very far away, that they would see that it's already the Chodesh. But then the Kutim went and they didn't believe in the Bezdin, so then they went and did the same thing on a different day, and they ruined the whole thing that they couldn't use this signal anymore. So Eskino, they instituted shiur shluchim yaitzin, that they have to have the shluchim of the Bezdin to go out and notify everybody. So therefore they couldn't get far enough. That's where the whole concept of Yontif Sheni Shel Golias began. The places that the shluchim can't reach to on Tezvav in the month. So now the Gemara explains, Abaye explains, V'ilu batlu kutim, if it's going to come a time when if the kutim would have been battle of this problem of the kutim ruining our signal would be battle of dina chad yaimeh. So then even in the faraway places where they would see with the signal when the Chodesh is, we would make just one day yontif. And v'heichu the mati shluchim, those locations where the shliach bezdin does arrive of dina chad yaimeh, we make one day. So therefore, we see that the whole concept of Yontif Sheni is only when we don't know. When we know it's, we would just make one day Yontif. So therefore, v'hashte the yadinam the kviyah the yarche. So now that we know the kviyas of the Chodesh, because we have the calendar, the way it was set up, that we know exactly the day. So my time of din and terei yoyme. Why do we make 2 days of Yontif if we don't have a suffix anymore? So the reason is mishum de sholchu mitam, because it was sent from Eretz Yisrael, that it was explained as follows: Hizharu b'minig aviseichem b'yedechem. You should keep the minig of your forefathers in your hand, because zimnin the gozru amalchus gzeira. What happens if there's going to be a decree from the government that Yidden shouldn't learn Torah, and the whole Messiah of the kviyas of the Chodesh will get lost, and va'asi la kulkule, and therefore it might become a mistake, and you won't know the kviyas of the Chodesh, and therefore they said, because it might become a kilkul, you should still keep the 2 days today. Right, that's what it refers to here, as Rashi explains. The Gzeira means that they're going to not learn Torah, they're going to forget the whole Seder Ibur, they're not going to know what the day is, and therefore we keep 2 days even today. So therefore, what's Abaye saying? Sof, even today, although it's not actually a suffix, but it's all based on maybe there could become a suffix. Really, we only make 2 days because of a suffix. It's not pshat that once the suffix was over, now Chachamim went and made a new takana, that we should keep 2 days anyways, even though there is no suffix, it's just 2 days, which are one long thing because there's no suffix at all. No, we see that the only time you make 2 days is because of a suffix. I bepoil there isn't a suffix, we're afraid that it's going to become a suffix again. So therefore Rav says the 2 days of Yontif are not considered to be one long hemshech. One day is Kodesh and the other day is Be'etzim Chayil. So it's only a takana misad a suffix, and therefore Rav says, and we paskin like Rav, that neil de bezeh muter is bezeh on the next day of Yontif it's muter. This is the second halacha of Rav that we paskin like Rav. Now the Gemara brings the third halacha, the third case where we paskin like Rav. So Itmar, we learned the machlekes, and here's regarding Rosh Hashanah. Shnei Yamim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah, the 2 days of Yontif of Rosh Hashanah. So Rav and Shmuel Damri Tavayu, Rav and Shmuel both said, Neil de Bezeh, Asur de Bezeh. The Rosh Hashanah is different. If the egg is born the first day of Rosh Hashanah, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, it's still Asur. So the question is, why are the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah different than the 2 days of a regular Yontif, where Rav said it's Mutter on the second day? So the Gemara explains the Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah and Rosh Hashanah regarding Rosh Hashanah that it says, B'Rishayna, in the beginning, Hoyim Mekablen, Eidus HaChedesh, Kol Hayom. They would allow the Eidus to come and say that it's the new month on the first day of Tishrei and Rosh Hashanah, all day they would accept the Eidus. So as Rashi explains, what do they do over here? It's a problem because Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the month, and you're not even sure yet if it's going to be the first day of the month. In other words, when it comes, Lamed Elul. So Lamed Elul, you're not sure if it's going to be Lamed Elul or Aleph Tishrei. It's going to be the first day of Rosh Hashanah. So when they came to the night of Lamed Elul, they already began keeping it as a Yom Tif. They do malacha. They began keeping it as a yontif already, and they were waiting the entire day to see, are Eidus going to come and make this day yontif or not? And they would accept the Eidus the entire day. Pa'amachas, then once, what happened? Nishtawe Eidim Lovoi, the Eidim were late, and they came when? They came late into the day, after the korban Tomit Ben Arbaim was brought. V'niskalkalu Alaviyim b'shir, and the Leviyim said the wrong shir by the Tomit Ben Arbaim. There's the shir that you say on a chayil, and there's a shiur that you say in Yontif, and they said the wrong shiur of Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. So Rashi explains it's specifically the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim that they had a unique shiur for the Yontif. For the Tamid Shel Shachar, they were not misakin a special shiur, because usually the Eidim anyways came after the Tamid Shel Shachar, so they weren't misakin a special shiur for that. But because the Eidim usually came before the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim, there was a special Yom Tov de Geshir for the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim, and the Eidim came late in the day, and they said it's Shir Shel Chayil, and then the Eidim come, and now you see that the whole day was really Yom Tov, and they should have said the Shir of Yom Tov. Taisus over here asks the question, there's a much bigger problem. It's not only the Shir. What's with the Korban Musaf? Why doesn't it say that the Eidim came after the Zman, after the Korban Tamid? You can't bring a Korban Musaf anymore. The Korban Tamid is the last Korban of the day. So Taisva says that usually you can't bring the Korban Musaf after, but Heichad Lo Yafshir, if you have no choice, so then even after the Korban Tamid, now you know it's Rosh Hashanah, they brought the Korban Musaf after the Korban Tamid. So that wouldn't have been the issue. But the song that you can't sing over the shir that they already did by the Korban Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. So therefore, Hiskino Chachamim U'Mesakin Shelo Yiyu Mekablim Nes Eidos El Ada Mincha. They're not going to accept Eidos only until Mincha time, when before they bring the Korban Tamid. If Eidim come past that time, so then Noyagin Oisei Yom Kodesh, they would consider to the Lamed Elul. That day they would finish it off Kodesh. In other words, they would not do any malacha on that day. Ulamacha Kodesh, and they would consider the next day to be Kodesh as well. So as Rashi explains, they didn't actually accept the Eidim until the next day. So it was only the next day that was actually Aleph Tishrei. So they're counting the calendar from the next day. Right? And so this is a special koyach that Chachamim have by Kiddush HaChodesh. Even though when the Eidim come, Minat Torah, they have to accept the Eidim right away. But Chachamim have a koyach to push off the Eidim until the next day, and they're only counting the Aleph from the next day. But yet, because Minat Torah, it was supposed to be accepted from the day before, so therefore they finished off, the Chachamim were Mesaken that the previous day should be Kodesh as well. This is the way the Alter Rebbe explains it in Shulchan Aruch. There's an Alter Rebbe in Siman Tov Reish. The Alter Rebbe is a big arichas there where the Alter Rebbe explains this, that the Chacham have a koyach on one hand to push it off to the next day, but because Minat Torah was right to be from the day before, so they finished off the previous day Kodesh as well. So what's the point? What does it come out from here? The 2 days of Rosh Hashanah that were kept Kodesh, it wasn't mitzad a suffix, it was a takanas Chachamim. They had the Eidim there, they pushed off the Eidim to the next day, and they made the previous day Kodesh and the next day Kodesh. So there's no suffix here. Right? And just like it was in Eretz Yisrael, in all the far places, they always kept 2 days because they didn't know when the Eidim are coming, and therefore in the Beis HaMikdash, it could be that they're having the 2 days Kodesh because the Eidim came late, and it would be Vadai Kodesh both days. So far away, they always kept the 2 days Kodesh. So the B'kitzur, you see over here that in Rosh Hashanah, it's not Mitzad HaSafik. It's even by the Beis HaMikdash. This was a Takanas Chachamim to have both days Kodesh. So if it's not a Safik, the 2 days are considered to be a Yom HaRichte. That's the Lashon regarding Rosh Hashanah, right? That it's one long day, and therefore the Beitza Shenelda on the first day is also on the second day. Amar Rabbe, but now Rabbe comes and says, Mitakanas Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai ve'elech, but after the Takana of Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, Beya Muteres. So the Beya on the second day of Rosh Hashanah will be Muter. So what's the Takana of Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai? That now we learned in the Mishnah, Mishachara Beis HaMikdash, after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai Shiyim Mekabel Eidos HaChodesh Kol Hayom. Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai was mesakin that you could accept the Eidos the entire day. So this whole thing of making the 2 days Kodesh is not relevant anymore. The whole problem was with the shear of the carbon. So after the Churban Abayis, Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai said you could accept the Eidim until the end of the day. So if you accepted the Eidim, then today is Kodesh. If you don't accept the Eidim, then tomorrow is Kodesh. So it's really the same suffix like every Yom Tov. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye said, no, it doesn't change. For Rav and Shmuel, the Amrit Harvayu, but Rav and Shmuel both said, Beya Asura, that the Beya of the first day of Yontiv is also on the second day. When did Rav and Shmuel live? After Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai was a Tana, and Rav and Shmuel said this much after the Churban Abaye. So we see that they held, and this is true even after the Churban. Amalei, so Rabbi said, Aminu Lachana, Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai. I'm telling you what Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai said. And you're telling me what Rav and Shmuel said? Rav and Shmuel are Amayraim. They can't argue with Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai. So the Gemara asks, Rav and Shmuel Kashia Masnisen. According to Rav and Shmuel, isn't there a question here from the Mishnah that says that Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai changed the takana, and today Rosh Hashanah is just like every other Yom Tov, that it's just a suffix, the takana in the time of the Beis HaMikdash doesn't exist anymore? So the Gemara answers, Loi kashya. This is not a question. Why? Halon v'halahu. There's a difference if you're here in Bavel or we are in Eretz Yisrael. So as Rashi explains this, in Eretz Yisrael, because the takana was changed, so there in Eretz Yisrael, the 2 days of Yom Tov doesn't apply anymore. But Lan, which means for the people in Bavel, we continue keeping the 2 days. So Enochanami, even though today, when we continue keeping the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, it's a Sveika de Yaimeh. It's only because of Sveika de Yaimeh. But because originally we kept 2 days not mitzat Sveika de Yaimeh, and we never stopped keeping those 2 days, it continues. We keep today 2 days like then 2 days. So therefore it's considered to be a hemshech, that it's the same status like it was in the beginning, and therefore a be'esh anel de bezeh is asur bezeh, because we never interrupted that minig of that halacha of keeping 2 days. So therefore Rav and Shmuel said it remains the same halacha. Rav Yosef says a different reason why the takana doesn't change. Even though the reason for the takana should change, the reason they had in the time of the Beis HaMikdash is not relevant anymore, but nevertheless, Rav Yosef says that it doesn't change. Af mitakanas Rav Yechanan ben Zakkai ve'elech. Even after Rav Yechanan ben Zakkai said that you could accept the Edom all day, nevertheless, Beya Asura, the Beya of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, is still us on the second day. My time, what's the reason? Havedovish b'minyan. This that was established, that the Beya should be Asur on the second day, is based on a psak that was paskin from the Bezdin at that time. Dovish b'minyan means they took the count, and they paskin according to the Raiv, and it was already paskin. And the rule is, v'chol dovish b'minyan, anytime you have a dovish b'minyan that was paskin by the numbers of the people that were there then in the Bezdin, tzarech minyan achalat tirai. Even if the reason of the original gzeira and takana does not apply anymore, you don't uproot that takana unless you have another Bezdin that's going to take account to uproot it. And that never happened. So therefore the original way we look at Rosh Hashanah, that it continues as one long day, remains. And now the Gemara is going to bring the source of this concept. Where do you see this idea that once Bezdin establishes something, even if the reason is not relevant anymore, you could only uproot it if you have another Bezdin, another minyan? Rav Yosef minallah, what's the source for this? So first he brings a pasuk that it says after Matan Torah, the Eibusher tells Moshe Rabbeinu, go tell the Yidden they can go back to their tents. That's one pasuk. The Gemara will soon explain what's the raya from here, that you need a davash minyan, you need another minyan to be matter. There's another pasuk, when they hear the sound of the shofar after Matan Torah, they can go back up on the mountain. Okay. Then he brings also a Mishnah. We're in a Mishnah where you see this Inyan that a Davash b'minyan needs another minyan to be materit. And the halacha is as follows: Kerem revai. When you have a vineyard in the 4th year, so what's the halacha of a vineyard of the 4th year? You have to bring up the fruits, the grapes to Yerushalayim. That's the halacha of revai. But what's the halacha of revai? You have an option. You can either bring it up to Yerushalayim or you redeem the fruits and just bring up the money. So the Gemara says that there was a takana that they should bring up the fruits itself from places that are close to Yerushalayim and it's not too far to schlep it. Chachamim were mesakin that you should bring it up to Yerushalayim. So kerem revai haya oilo Yerushalayim. The takana was to bring it up to Yerushalayim. Mahalach yom echad l'chol tzad. If you're close enough that it's only 1 day of distance to walk to come to Yerushalayim. And v'zui tchuma. This is the tchum to go to Yerushalayim. Olas min atzofin, the gersa is really supposed to be min adorim. Vakraves min adorim, the gersa is supposed to be min atzofin. Lud min amayrev, lud on the mayrev side, and yarden min amizrach, and the yarden on the mizrach side. If you're that close, you have to bring up the fruits to Yerushalayim. Varamar ola v'teimer rabba babachana. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, what's the reason why Chachamim were mesakin that you should not redeem the fruits and bring money, but you should bring the fruits itself to Yerushalayim if you're close enough? So he said, Matam, Kedela Ater, Shuke Yerushalayim Bepeiris. This Chachamim wanted that the streets of Yerushalayim should be beautified with the fruits that you bring up. That's one halacha that it says in the Mishnah. And then it says another brayse, V'tanya kerem revai hoyalele Rabbi Eliezer b'mizrach lud b'tzad kfar tuvi. Rabbi Eliezer, he had a vineyard mizrach of Lud, in other words, close enough to Yerushalayim by this kfar tuvi, by this village of Tevi that is, and it was really close enough to bring it to Eretz Yisrael. And he said, you know what, I'm going to be mafkirit for poor people and let them bring it to Yerushalayim. He couldn't schlep it himself. He said, I'm going to be mafkirit in order to fulfill the takanas chachamim that has to be brought to Yerushalayim. So a student said to him, you don't have to do this. Rebbe, our Rebbe, kfar nimnu alecha chavirecha v'hitiru your chaverim already took account and they were matter, they undid this original takana. There was the original takana that you're supposed to come with the fruits to Yerushalayim. They already undid this takana. Man chavirecha, who are the friends? Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai came and instituted that you don't need to bring your fruits to Yerushalayim anymore. That's what it says in a Beitza. So what do you see from here? Time denimnu. The only reason the original takana to bring the fruits is not relevant anymore is because they took a minyan again. The Bezdin again went and undid it. But if not, then the original takana would remain. Okay, so here you see that even though the reason for the takana did not apply anymore, after the Churban, who was in Yerushalayim? There were Goyim in Yerushalayim. I mean, Rashi says, even though the Gemara over here is going according to the opinion that the Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash still remains, but nevertheless the reason for the takana doesn't apply, because it's Goyim. We have to beautify the cities, the streets of Yerushalayim for the Goyim at that point. But nevertheless, only because there was a minyan acher la'atirai did they uproot this original takana. So this was the raya that he brought. Who is it over here? We're speaking over here. Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef is bringing a raya from this that you need to have a second minyan to uproot it. Okay, that's one raya. Then the Gemara is going to bring over here the other rayas. Okay, I guess we'll continue. The next year brings the other rayas that you need a minyan acher la'atirai.